Hi, welcome to Total Recall. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics.
And I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can check out my Patreon on patreon.com. Just search my name, Tom Scioli.
You can find me on Instagram at cinema_tune.
We're doing another Star Wars themed episode, but this one's pretty exciting. It's pretty personal to me. Empire Strikes Back is like my favorite movie of all time, and we decided that we would check out that first draft script by Leigh Brackett.
Brackett. It was not on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't on my radar. I watched it a trillion times. See Leigh Brackett on there. You're like, hey, let's vibe out on this script. I was like, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so exciting, and it's great to see the origins of Empire.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always heard the name Leigh Brackett, and this is the person who wrote the script for Empire Strikes Back, and it's like, oh, I love Empire Strikes Back. Had like a lot of goodwill, but it never occurred to me to like seek it out and read it. And like, I guess like another thing, like as I kind of learned more about Star Wars and Empire and Return of the Jedi, like I got the sense from George Lucas that like it kind of like the way he positioned it, and Lawrence Kasdan positioned it was kind of like, okay, Leigh Brackett wrote this first draft. It was awful. We had to like start from scratch, throw the whole thing out, and begin and so we left her name on the movie just because we're nice, or because of like union rules or something. But and so that was kind of that, like I kind of internalized that thought, just thought like, oh, okay, so
they're throwing her a bone.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, all these years sitting down to read it, and it was a revelation.
Yeah, basically every major beat of that story is in the screenplay.
Yeah, it's it's a really interesting alternate version of Empire Strikes Back. Like a lot of the same things sort of happen. They happen in different ways. There's like extra things. There's things that kind of resonate with the finished version. Interesting, like roads not traveled.
Yeah, and like a lot of the terminology and names are used, but they're like swapped around.
Yeah, which like the times that I've read the various like drafts for Star Wars, that was a similar thing. He would like kind of test out different names and then swap them out or whatever. So there's more of that here. Not quite as much as in Star Wars, but there's still a good bit of it here.
The looking through it too, realized that it had been in the Lucasfilm archives for like 30 years, and it also was only available in the archives at a college in New Mexico. So up until like 2016, we didn't no one really had real easy access to the screenplay.
It never occurred to me before we started doing this show to like sit down and read that script. So for all I knew, it's been available since the 90s or whatever. Leigh Brackett, she was a science fiction writer from like some of like the earliest days of like the sci-fi pulps and stuff like that, and she was called like the Queen of the Space Opera, which like you can see why like Lucas would be like, okay, this is the person to write a Star Wars, the Star Wars 2 basically, which is what it was back then. She married Edmund Hamilton, who was also like one of those like early sci-fi writers, and he did some comics. He did like some Supermans and stuff, like some Batmans, just and like during sort of like the more sort of like when Batman would like travel to other planets and stuff like that. It was like the more sci-fi kind of era of comics.
At their wedding, I was reading the best man at their wedding was Ray Bradbury.
Okay, yeah, so yeah,
talk about like you're like
and I've been kind of like doing a lot of research in kind of like that era of like kind of like the history of science fiction and stuff, and like some of that early stuff. So yeah, like that was a surprisingly tight-knit circle. Like everybody knew each other, because it started out as like a very small world, where it's like basically like zines.
Yeah, like a scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She came from the pulps and from that era. Like that was the criticism I'd heard Lucas give, or maybe Kasdan, or maybe both of them, was like the script for Empire. It was too old-fashioned. It wasn't Star Wars. It wasn't now. It wasn't like 80s or what. Like it was very 40s and very arch and whatever. And again, like we've had this same experience with a lot of scripts we've read where it's the same story, where it's like, oh yeah, the first draft worthless, and then we created the great thing. And it's like no, it's a pretty great script.
It is, and like a lot of our favorites are in, like, Wampas running around, like,
yeah, it follows pretty much the trajectory of Empire, and hits a lot of the beats, hits them a little differently. And again, it's like it's not there yet. It's like it's not Empire Strikes Back. It's not the Empire Strikes Back we know and love yet. But what it's missing is like sort of a matter of tightening and polish and working on the focus. It's not like, we got to start from scratch. We're going to make something totally different. Like one of the things it is lacking is the sort of like Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn kind of like screwball comedy, snappy patter, and love story between Han and Leia. There is a love story. There is, but it's not. It doesn't have like the snappy lines.
Even with that, she came from like you mentioned, the pulps and stuff. I think she wrote The Long Goodbye. I remember. Yeah. I think we watched that. We both watched that recently.
That like she had sort of made that jump into like screenwriting and something like relatively recently before doing Empire Strikes Back. And the way the story goes is that she like turned in her draft of the Empire Strikes Back script and then died the same day. And so like Lucas couldn't be like, let's talk about it, or let's do send me a second draft or whatever. It's like, this is what and he felt like, okay, this isn't what I want, and I'm gonna have to kind of scramble and figure something out. It's like missing those kind of elements. But like if we talk about the things that are there, it's like
we start on Hoth.
Hoth, we got the ice planet, and he's riding on like a snow lizard, they call it, which is interesting. Like I only like relatively recently like looking through one of these like Star Wars books and like seeing like the listing for Tauntaun, and then like it said like, oh, they're like these snow lizards from the planet, blah blah blah, and I'm looking and I'm like, it never, like I would have never, like I had the Tauntaun toy when I was a kid and stuff, and I never saw lizard.
No, I saw like kind of like a mammally creature.
Yeah, like a kangaroo.
Kangaroo, yeah. Maybe a
like
marsupial.
Cow, some kind, something. But I didn't think lizard. Mm-hmm. It's like kind of furry, and I'm sure like in space, like you could have like a furry lizard, and for all I know, maybe there are like lizards with hair on it. I don't know. I'm not a zoologist or anything. But they didn't read as lizard. So I mean, I'm guessing it's like a remnant of the writing process where it's like, okay, we're gonna have these space lizards, and then when it went to the design department, they came up with something very
cool,
different. Cool. Yeah.
I don't think it's called Hoth. I think they're just referring to like the ice planet.
Yeah, it's like the nameless ice planet. The Wampa was like an ice, it was in like an ice castle or something. They referred to it.
Yeah, and like what the Wampas were when they were like kind of like giving them supernatural powers, kind of. When I was reading the script, it was reminding me kind of like of the Wendigo. Yeah. Like the myth, like supernatural Bigfoot-ish Yeti kind of like things, and I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid and like seeing that movie, like we referred to it as, like, we didn't call it the Wampa or anything.
Me neither. Yeah.
We referred to it as the Abominable Snowman.
That's what we did too. Yes.
And I don't know if that's one of those things where it's like, that's how it was referred to, like, officially, and then the toy comes out and the toy says Wampa, and so it's like, okay, now
when I found out it was called a Wampa, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, Daddy made its way in the Star Wars universe.
I remember the toy commercial, and the kid's playing with the toy, and he's saying Wampa, Wampa, Wampa as he's playing with it, like that's the noise that they make or something.
I was reading somewhere like, I don't know if I was huffing gas or what, or this is legit, but I think they had the Wampa like slash Luke's face up because he got in that car accident, and they were trying to like explain away his like scars on his face.
Yeah, like it follows the same trajectory as the finished movie. Now, you have all the Hoth stuff. He gets attacked by a Wampa. He makes his, he makes his way back to base, and they're all searching for him. He makes his way back to base, and then there's like an Imperial attack on the planet. Like the Empire, like they find. I don't remember there being probe droids.
I don't remember there being that.
Yeah, that wasn't part of it.
Or the AT-ATs.
Exactly. Yeah, there's like a battle with the Imperial forces attacking their base, but it's like tanks. Like they just sent tanks. So the design department or whoever didn't come up with the idea of like, hey, what if these tanks have like super long legs? And Luke isn't part of the battle. Like like the Hoth snow speeders versus AT-ATs. Like in this, he's not involved in that artillery versus tank battle. He's like at the base. He's like so badly injured from his encounter with the Wampa that he's like not like he's weak. Like and it even becomes like a story issue because in this script they continue as they do in the final version, they continue the sort of love triangle between like Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo. It's like is she gonna fall in love with one or the other or neither? Like what's it gonna be? And so they continue that here, and it's a lot closer to the surface than it is in the final movie. Like in the final movie, there's like she kisses Luke. There's some jokes and some jealousy and stuff. But in this, it's like he tells Princess Leia like, I love you, and she's like, you know what, like I love you too, but I love Han too, and there's no time for love anyway because like we got this war to win. So it is like those issues are like dealt with and built on in this script just in like a more overt way. George Lucas has admitted to that like he was just making this up as he went along. Like all that talk about having a plan, it was like, okay, he had some basic gist of where the story was going, but it was very hazy and very unformed. It wasn't like a beat for beat thing. So like the whole Luke and Leia being brother and sister and so like that was like they came up with that like 2 days before they started shooting Return of the Jedi. Like they're like, okay, how do we they're brother and they weren't like it was a different era, so they weren't as like going through their heads like, okay, wait, there was that scene where they kissed. What's that mean?
Yeah.
Like it really was like
I love that era too, where it's like, okay, this isn't. It's like the reviewing the facts in the slasher movies. Everything isn't available at all times.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're gonna forget.
Yeah, nobody remembers that kiss.
That kiss, yeah. They're like, no one has a site they can go to have access to all media at all times.
It's still like up in the air if like she's in if she and Luke are gonna end up together or she and Han, and then and Luke, because he's still like physically weak from his injury with the Wampa, he's when the big like full scale Wampa attack, because while the Empire is attacking the base, there's also an attack from like this whole army of Wampas coming into the base. I was getting
scared reading it. I was like, it's kind of creeping me out, like them in there.
It was pretty tense. It kind of felt like there was like a little bit of like a horror element, and it felt like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, or something, where you're in this like Arctic base, lights go out, and now they're in darkness, kind of like Aliens. Also, like, okay, we're surrounded by these creatures, and they're like way more powerful than we thought they were, and they're smarter than we thought they were.
Were they? I can't remember exactly. Was like the rebels like blowing up the base to like make more room in there? I kept hearing like dynamite was going off there.
Yeah, it's like they were like using the lasers from the spaceships to like carve out more space, like all those caves. And that's kind of those, like when you look at the Hoth caves, it's all these horizontal lines, and that's what you're seeing is like the blast lines as they dug this thing out. So yeah, they're building this base, and
we got the money shot coming up.
Yeah, there are elements of this in the final Empire Strikes Back script. Like they did film some scenes of like Wampa attacks, and that there's even and that they had this like cage where they were keeping like imprisoned Wampas. Like they even filmed this, and then like C-3PO, there's like a sign that says like warning, keep out, and then like C-3PO takes the sign off. And then, like, so then when the Empire comes there, they like open up that door, and then they get attacked by Wampas. Oh. So and also like one of the remnants you can see in the finished film is there's like a scene where they're walking past this room, and in the background you see like a tauntaun that's kind of like slashed up, and so it's like this was like, you know, a remnant of like a Wampa attack that got, you know, cut, you know, out of but was shot, was filmed but didn't make it in. So but the Wampa attack is even more amped up in this Leigh Brackett script, and it slowly dawns on the rebels that like this like these Wampa, they're not just these like weird, you know, bears or whatever. They're actually like really smart, and they're actually doing a coordinated attack, and they're also like might have some kind of like supernatural powers where they can kind of like phase through like they were saying they go through snow like a shark goes through water, so it's like the walls won't stop. So like just all of a sudden there's like this like mass of these creatures in there, and they're like really tough to fight, and Luke tries to fight them, you know, with his lightsaber and stuff, and because of his weakness he gets knocked out, and then
oh my gosh, the money shot is Chewbacca fights. It's Chewbacca v Wampa.
Yeah, Chewbacca fighting a Wampa, and it's like, what a great moment.
Oh my god.
And like Chewbacca really like, you know, he like, man, how great would that have been to see? And like, has that image like shown up in Star Wars fandom? Like, is there like one of those like tops Star Wars cards where it's some artist's interpretation?
Yeah, is it on DeviantArt somewhere?
Yeah, and because it is kind of like, you know, Bigfoot, like Sasquatch versus the Yeti, you know?
Yeah, like...
The other thing with the Wampa is that they kind of have like powers like Iceman in the X-Men. Like he can like conjure up snow. Like so as he's wrestling with Chewbacca, he kind of like ices up Chewbacca's fur. Like he starts getting these like clumps
of ice hanging off him. I mean, they're like rolling around by the Falcon, I think. Mm-hmm. And I wish we could have seen that on the big screen.
Yeah, maybe that would have been worth the special editions. Like if George Lucas, like because Empire Strikes Back got off kind of easy. That's the one where when Lucas made his changes for the special editions, he had the lightest touch with Empire. He kind of had a heavier touch with Star Wars and with Jedi, but like. It would have been worth, you know, shoehorning in that scene of Chewbacca fighting a Wampa.
Like, I always appreciated that even that in the special editions, because I think he added, it was more Wampa stuff, but it was like practical effect. It was like more guy in
It was like
suits.
a guy in a Wampa suit. Yeah, I enjoyed that part myself too. Yeah. The Empire special edition, like I still, when I watch the movies, I watch the like original versions, not the special editions, but of the three, the Empire Special Edition is one that I will tolerate. I won't tolerate the other two, but I would, like if I accidentally put in the wrong disc, I'll watch, you know, the rest of Empire.
My explosions need an extra CGI ring.
All this stuff about Luke being like weak, like after they get out of the situation with the Wampa, which again, like we said, was very tense and like very cool, and we're just sitting here reading a script. We're not watching a movie, so like to sort of read a script and still feel some like tension and fear, like it's you know very well done. But so then after that, when they're doing kind of the post game of like, oh, that was a crazy situation, like Han and Leia are both like, look, Luke, I know you wanna like you know, you wanna impress us and stuff, but like you gotta heal, you gotta rest up, you know, you're getting ahead of yourself. And he does say something to Leia about like, I love you and I want to protect you, like and he's super bummed about his like failure fighting off the Wampa. Like it really sticks with him.
Yeah,
you know?
he you're right. He's like throughout the script he's pretty down on himself. He's kind of like super sad sack Luke, it feels like. Do you? Yeah,
and he's really pining after Leia. Like the final version of Empire, it's kind of like you know, Han and Leia are on sort of like a more conventional trajectory where like there is room in their life for like love or whatever, you know, until it becomes like doomed by the carbonite situation, all that. But that like in the final version, it's like Luke is almost on kind of like a monastic journey where he's like you know like love and like you know a family and a conventional life. Like that's just not the path I'm on. I'm on sort of like this lonelier path of like enlightenment, and that I'm gonna have some like huge task I'm gonna have to do in the world that like only I can do, and so there's no room for any of that stuff. Where in this Leigh Brackett version, it's like he's on his journey and like he's constantly thinking about Princess Leia, and he is like bummed that he, you know, he feels like he's kind of like losing to Han, that like Han is just like older and cooler and he's not, and it's really eating at him, and to the point where like even Darth Vader gets involved. Like Darth Vader, with all his like mind reading and stuff with Luke, like he does say to Luke like, hey, if you join, like it wasn't like, oh, like they don't have I am your father. He's not Luke's father, but he is like, hey, join up with me. You and me can defeat the Emperor, and if you join up with me, then Princess Leia will really be impressed with you.
He's like, you will be the coolest guy. Also, there was a large focus on like the lightsaber crystals seem to be having a big play in this too. They keep mentioning like the tech, like how lightsabers work, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
And then this extra crystal kind of falls out of the lightsaber. And it's like, oh, what's this? Maybe C-3PO discovers it, and it's like an extra crystal, and that was like hidden in there, that has like, it had like coordinates for like the Jedi planet.
It reminded me of the MacGuffin from like the from the.
Well, that, but then also, like the MacGuffin from The Rise of Skywalker, but also the MacGuffin from The Force Awakens, where it's like we're looking for Luke. And we have this like incomplete map, and we need this extra piece of the map to find the old Jedi training grounds or whatever, the old Jedi temple or whatever it is. Like, Luke isn't, like he's not involved in that battle on Hoth with the snow speeders and stuff. He's not involved in that battle. He's like fighting Wampas and stuff while all that's going on. And so like that was like a smart addition to the script of like get him involved in it, like this story is about these characters, so let's put the focus on them. And then also like I'm seeing things that are part of the Star Wars like iconography and mythos that like weren't cemented yet. Like reading this kind of made me realize that like I don't think in the first Star Wars, I don't think they mention like the dark side of the Force. I think they just talk about the Force as like, oh, it's the Force. Darth Vader talks about the Force the same way Ben Kenobi talks about the Force. And then it's like in this, it's like, okay, there's this thing, okay, we told you about the Force, but there's also this thing called the dark side of the Force. Yeah. And it's this thing you can tap into, and like Luke, kind of starts tapping into it, and that's where you get to like hurl things at each other, like with your mind. So like the mythology's expanding, and then also like, like the X-Wing fighter is closely associated with Luke. It's kind of like that's Luke's ship in Star Wars mythology. But that wasn't really set in stone yet. And so like, because he flew a number of vehicles, it's like the land speeder could have been equal, like the land speeder was associated with Luke up until a point. It's like, okay, but then kind of like the final version of Empire Strikes Back was kind of what cemented that, okay, Luke flies an X-Wing. That's what he's about. But in this version, he doesn't. No. He doesn't fly an X-Wing at all.
I don't remember what they kept calling. They called it, they had an interesting, like a...
He was flying, it was Princess Leia's, like, space something.
The spacer. They kept calling it the spacer.
That's it, yeah. He was flying Princess Leia's spacer. So, like, at this point, he's not identified with, like, the X-Wing yet. Yeah. That kind of that becomes a thing in the final.
You're so right. It's like, you see these things, and it's like, somebody has to like make that connection. It's like in an alternate reality. What if they never made that connection? Oh my god!
Yeah. What if it's like every movie he's flying a different spaceship? You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, X-Wing was like Star Wars. Now we're in Empire, so now he's flying the spacer. And then Return of the Jedi. Now he's flying the whatever. They have the beat of like they need to hold on to Han Solo because he's like ready to leave. How do we hold on to him and stuff? And so in this, there's kind of a MacGuffin where it's like we find out that Han Solo has like a stepfather that he's estranged from, who's like the wealthiest man in the universe, and he's you know, and he's this like construction magnate or whatever, like he could build spaceships or whatever. And so like the rebels need to like get in touch with him to get him to like kind of finance, build up
their operation.
Their operation. And they're like asking Han to like help, you know, to go talk to him, and he's like, I don't really get along with the guy. So it kind of you know, it was an interesting development of Han's character, and I think like a bad one, like because it's like, okay, so now Han is like this sort of child of privilege who's kind of like, you know, slumming it. He's like, okay, I'm you know, like I'm gonna, you know,
he's like a trust fund punk or something.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
I'm tired of being a punk. I'm just gonna tap out and go. It's like, hey, you're a punker. I just saw you go over to that ATM and make like a $500 withdrawal.
Yeah. So like that was, but it's like they still have that element of like, okay, you know, Han's gonna have to go off and do something, and like, and we're trying to like entice him to like kind of double down on his commitment to the cause, to his commitment to the rebellion, because, you know, he's ready to just kind of leave. So that's the form it took in this. Like they found a better way to do it in the final version. The name Lando is in it.
Yeah.
And you know, Lucas says that she wrote this script based on like an outline he gave her. So like we don't really know how much Leigh Brackett brought, how much, you know, was in that original document. You know, she didn't contribute nothing. You know, she produced a script, and it's a complete, you know, so there are elements of this that, like, I guess we'll never know for sure which are her ideas and which are ideas that Lucas, you know, sent to her to build this. But obviously, you know, some of this is hers and some of this is his, and we just don't know the degree. Maybe it's 99% Leigh Brackett and 1% Lucas, or maybe it's, you know, 1% Leigh Brackett, 99% George Lucas, or something in between. You know what I mean? Like
Leigh Brackett, like what a pivotal person in the Star Wars. Like what a like.
Yeah, so important. And,
so important.
And just kind of like for me, like as a kid, like a huge fan of Empire Strikes Back. Like I was aware of her name. It was like, oh wow, Leigh Brackett. Like, you know, she wrote the script for Empire Strikes Back. So yeah, she's obviously, you know, some kind of genius. And like it was Lando Kadar, not Lando Calrissian was Lando's name. And I mean, you know, again, like we're just kind of trying to figure this stuff out as best we can. But I think she came up with the name Lando.
Yes.
Like that feels like
a Leigh Brackett.
Leigh Brackett. That feels like space opera. That, you know, kind of like, you know, Orlando. Like
she was
kind of like Shakespearean, you know.
Modeling the character off of Rudolph Valentino. She
right.
said,
Yeah.
Like,
mm-hmm.
And
yeah, this sort of like romantic character, you know.
And you also the Bespin was Hoth.
The planet of clouds was called Hoth.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Getting back to Star Wars roots as like being like a Flash Gordon tribute or whatever, like there are some very Flash Gordon elements, and like the riding around on snow lizards is like straight out of the Flash Gordon comic, you know, of the 30s and 40s. And like, yeah, those flying around on these like big flying creatures, that feels very Flash Gordon too. In this version, there's a surface to Bespin or Hoth as they call it. There's a surface, and it's kind of and when they show up, you know, Han is kind of surprised how much Bespin has changed, because that Cloud City didn't exist the last time he was there, and like the last time he knew about Lando. Like he just knew that Lando went there and like became very close with like the leader of this like tribe that on the surface, and where it's like you know, they're kind of living in these sort of like, you know, ancient ruins, you know.
On the surface, and then there is a Cloud City, and it's connected by this pretty ahead of her time too. Like the concept of like, now they're like, you know, deep space travel. We have to have a space elevator to take this. So she was like created like I don't know if she created it, but like there was a giant space elevator like that connected to like an orbiting like.
Yeah, that's like that big stalk.
Yeah.
That you see at the, like that you know, and in the final version it's just floating, but it still has that big stalk. Where in this version that stalk goes all the way to the surface, and I think that is a George Lucas concept. I think that was in the original like script for Star Wars, where that was going to be the Imperial planet, and that was like the Imperial city was like on this like pedestal. It was on this like tall stalk that went like all, and it was in the clouds, and and then it just got left off because they would have like in you know some of his early drafts of Star Wars, there'd be like these cutaways to the Emperor and you know the Imperial city and all this stuff, which I don't think was called Coruscant at that point, but and similarly in this script we have cutaways to Darth Vader's planet and Darth Vader's castle.
Oh, it's so cool! Like that would, I love the fact that Darth Vader has a cat. Like it's just perfect. Like of course this evil like that guy and how he looks would reside in the castle.
Yeah, and it's like volcanic, and we have seen this castle since then. We've seen it in Rogue One. Yeah. You know, and there's like a Lego of it of the Darth Vader's castle.
So amazing.
and there's like a couple scenes there, and he's got like gargoyles. There's like you know it's got this very like gothic feel to like Darth Vader's planet.
I love it. In Brackett's script, there's an extended dinner scene.
Yes.
Like the dinner, and I thought that was like, oh my god, I would love. Everyone's drinking a ton of wine. I'm like, I would love to see Vader like munching down on something.
Yeah, like lifting up his, because that was.
Pardon me.
It's like in the final version, they go into that dinner, and then like, and it plays out pretty much the same in here. Lando's like, hey, come on, let's have this dinner, and then they open up the door, and it's Darth Vader and stuff. And then like that's kind of the end of this, and Boba Fett steps out, and then that's the end of the scene. But yeah, in this script. Then they sit down and actually have the dinner.
I was like, "This is amazing." It's like Tarantino movie.
Yeah,
like...
yeah, they're sitting around and
it goes on for a while.
Yeah, it you know luxuriates. And they're drinking wine and stuff. They reference the Clone Wars again. Mm-hmm. You know, referenced in Star Wars, and then it's referenced again here. And like, and they talk about like, is Lando a clone? Like they're not sure if he's a clone or not, and that kind of makes them like when they arrive. Princess Leia is very like distrustful of Lando, just like she is in the final script. She's but part of it is plugged into kind of like, is he a clone or not?
She gives him like a fake name.
Yeah, she's traveling under an alias. Like she has this fake name that she's giving people because again, like watching Empire Strikes Back, it's like when you know when they show up and it's like, oh, here's Leia. It's like, oh, you mean like Princess Leia, the person that's on all the wanted posters. That the Empire's looking for, you know. Oh no, I'm a different Leia. Where in this, she has like a fake. There's a lot more preparations in this. Like in this, they have these like, I think it's like a pendant or a locket or something that has the coordinates for the rendezvous point that they're going to meet, and then they like plug it into the ship, and then they have these like all of them have these like fake identities set up, these fake names set up. Which again, getting rid of that, it's kind of like. Yeah, it kind of reduces the confusion watching a movie, and you know.
There's also the beat too where C-3PO like walks into a bad room and gets destroyed.
That's there. It's in this like again. I was shocked how much of like the Empire Strikes Back we know and love is in here because I totally I expected it to just be a total like you know just like a total tangent. Like I thought this script was going to be like. You know, like and then there's you know a joust, and then there's like I thought it was going to be just a totally different story, you know, like because they really do give you the impression that like they threw all this out the window and started from scratch, and they did
not.
They refined, they tightened, and like this, you know, this is how first drafts are. Like they're not, you know, like yes, I understand when Lucas got that first draft, it's like yes, this is not. What the finished movie is going to be, but that's just part of the process. If he had written it himself, it would have been the same thing. It would have been like, no, this is, and that's how his process was when he wrote Star Wars. It was like, this isn't it, and then you keep working with it until it becomes it. So like, you know, Leigh Brackett's role like needs to be spoken of a lot differently.
I'm glad we could put it on the record here too.
Yeah, that like she really is like a like a co-author to Empire Strikes Back, but like a key co-author, not somebody who just was part of the process, but did not. She was really, she brings so much to the table, and this, in a lot of ways, this is kind of the hardest work, is when you're like really just kind of figuring out the shape of this thing, and she does that. It's like Hoth, Dagobah, which I forget what
they call it, the Bog Planet.
Bog Planet, and Cloud City, and the chase. Like there is the chase through space. The
asteroid field.
Yeah, the asteroid field.
That's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Yoda, aka Minch.
Yeah, he's called Minch in this, and it's like I was kind of wondering because some of the names, like I'm wondering where the name Minch came from.
He's a real Minch.
We talked about Hoth, or the ice planet, and then we talked about the cloud planet. And I think they call them like the cloud people, like the people who like live, who like are native to that planet. They call them like the cloud people or whatever. And it is that trope of like, oh, these are like the primitive people, and then civilization came, and the civilization is kind of exploiting this world and sending it out of balance with nature, and then they're more, but we kind of skipped over, like the Dagobah or the Bog Planet stuff, as they're doing the evacuation of the ice planet. Darth Vader's in the base, and Luke is in Princess Leia's space. Like Princess Leia and Han are in the Falcon. Like they split up exactly like they do in the movie. Yeah. And he's on Princess Leia's personal spacer with R2-D2, and then he's about to take off, and then Darth Vader reaches out with the Force and starts to choke Luke in the space. So Luke's in the ship, and then Luke starts choking from like a remote choke. And Darth Vader thinks that he killed Luke. He thinks that Luke is dead. And then R2-D2 kind of like presses the button or whatever that makes the ship take off. So the ship takes off, but Darth Vader's like, okay, Luke Skywalker, he's been dealt with. And which is like an interesting twist. And Luke is like, they do talk about his like fame a lot more in this than they do in the final movie. Like, if you read a lot of the Star Wars comics that were coming out around that time, they do talk a lot about his fame. It's like, you're the guy who blew up the Death Star. Like Luke is like, world, famous throughout the galaxy, and like people can't even believe it. And he's kind of like living in the shadow of that. He's kind of like, wow, it's weird. Like, to me, I just feel like it was this like 1 in a million thing that I was really lucky, but everybody thinks I'm some, great hero or whatever. And I sure don't feel like a great hero. Like, he's kind of living in the shadow of his own reputation in like the comics and stuff. And that's here in this script. He's living in the shadow of his accomplishment, and he is kind of questioning it. Like, was it just a fluke? Am I like a one-hit wonder? And I do wonder if that's like, if that's some autobiography on Lucas's part, where it's like I created this hit movie, American Graffiti, and then after that, it's like I got to start all over again and prove myself, and people aren't believing me about this Star Wars movie, And then it's like I create the Star Wars movie, it's a big hit, and now I'm like, the bank is like ready to shut down production and call in my loan on Empire Strikes Back. It's that, like, it makes sense. It's like, you can accomplish, like it's been his personal experience that you can accomplish this amazing thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what have you done for me lately? And the self-questioning.
It's like you're right. For Empire, he did put his own money into it, and then got, they're like, please don't do that bad. But I think he ended up getting like total like control over it or something.
I think he had to like give up a couple. Like he had to go back to the studio and give up a couple. Like he still maintained like control or whatever, but he had to give up some like points and things that he would not have had to if the bank didn't call in his loan. And the bank called in his loan. They said like, he's like, okay, I'm making the sequel to like the biggest movie ever. It's going to make the money. And they're like, we're sorry, but we have this policy. We have a new president of the bank and a new policy where if X, Y, and Z happens, then we have to call in the loan and blah blah blah. So that like, it was just it was a nightmare. One of the things from like the Star Wars series is that it like never ends. You can never like rest. It's like, oh man, we're in trouble again, and it's like that was Lucas's life, no matter what he accomplished, it's like you're back to square one.
It's like back on the big screen, American Graffiti, the special edition, and it shows Ron Howard's car explode, and then like
Darth Vader thinks that he killed Luke Skywalker and took care of this like upstart who caused all this trouble for them in the previous movie. Now, and he also like explained. There's like some exposition where Darth Vader explains like how he got from like his spaceship, circling away to like back.
That was so interesting. It's like they had to. He's like, remember that was Han Solo, or he makes a point to mention it was Han Solo and Chewie that caused them to spin out of control.
Yeah, like it's remind you like, okay, what happened in the last movie and like how he didn't, he wasn't lost in space forever at the end of Star Wars. He did I
thought that was so interesting that they had to they zeroed in on that and like gave a reason.
And then it's got like the thing where he talks to the Emperor, like he talks to him via view screen in the script, and he's talking to the Emperor, and instead of the Emperor saying like, oh yeah, this Luke Skywalker guy, he's the son of Anakin Skywalker, and he's going to be trouble for us, and like we may be able to turn him to. That's not the conversation. The conversation that they have in this is, you thought that you killed Luke Skywalker, but it turns out he's actually alive. He survived. You didn't quite fully force choke him. He's still alive. So you got to go. You got to go find him. And so Darth Vader like kind of reaches out through like astral projection, or talks to him across the universe. Some more, and then that's where he tries to tempt him with like, I can give you Princess Leia.
I can give you your sister.
He lands on the Bog planet, and it is, again, it's the same beat. He lands in the water, and then it talks about like in this script you see from the perspective of R2-D2's periscope.
Yes.
Like, he has the periscope in the movie, but here you actually see like you see periscope view.
Yogurt shows up.
Yeah, yogurt. Like Minch does feel a lot like yogurt in this, and he shows up, and I think it's like immediate. Like they kind of land, they get out, and then it's like, hey, I'm Minch. Now I forget. Does he do the thing of like pretending that he's not Yoda, or does he just take them straight?
I think
say like, oh, I'm Yoda. I'm Minch.
I think he might put up trick him a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think.
And Luke ends up on this planet. It wasn't like Obi-Wan's ghost telling him to go to the planet. It was that crystal, right?
I think it was the crystal.
The crystal had like coordinates for this planet where like there's like a Jedi or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then he follows it and goes there. And so he ends up on that planet, and then and I think that there's also the beat of like, oh, you're too old.
Yeah.
To do the training.
Yeah. He it's where he is like, this guy's a Jedi Master.
Yeah, and the food is gross.
Yeah.
Like he gives him food and it's gross. So it's like
in the hut.
Yeah, in the hut, and like Luke is still kind of sick. Like he's still kind of recovering from his injury. So he's kind of like got the revulsion. Like he's revulsed by this like food that Yoda gives him. It's
I always thought Yoda's bed looked so cozy
in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and then when he dies in Return of the Jedi, I always I choke up every time when he's like, to sleep.
We get in this script.
Oh my god!
We get up like stuff that like in 1980 we might have seen stuff that we didn't see until Attack of the Clones.
Yes.
In this, like Yoda has a lightsaber in the script. He fires it up, and then he starts flipping through the air, doing all this crazy.
To this day, still, Attack of the Clones, Yoda. Fighting Count Dooku, of all the movies I've ever seen, got the biggest audience pop of any film I like. In the theater when Yoda pulled the lightsaber out, I haven't been in a theater that reacted to literally anything on the screen, or even after a film was over clapping. Mm-hmm. I was just there for that pop. Everyone popped huge, and I was like, what?
So that's in Draft 1 script, it's not a fight, but he's like, I'm going to show you how to use a lightsaber, and then Minch, aka Yoda, he lights up his lightsaber, and he's twirling around doing these, and so like Luke's training in this is, he's got all the sort of like truisms and mental stuff and like control your temper and stuff but it's a lot of lightsaber training too. It's a lot of like teaching him how to swing a lightsaber, which is like there's like really no lightsaber stuff. You know, to its credit, in Empire Strikes Back, he meets Yoda, this great warrior, and he doesn't learn anything about like how to fight or the lightsaber. He learns things about control and you know, kind of getting in control of yourself and your anger and things, which I think was a good, like, but in this, it's like, yeah, I'm going to teach you how to be good with a lightsaber. And this is where Ben's Force Ghost finally shows up, because he's like, okay, I'm going to show you how to use a lightsaber, and then Ben Kenobi's Force Ghost shows up, and then like Minch starts doing a lightsaber duel with Ben Kenobi's ghost.
This existed on paper like years.
Yeah.
It was right there all along.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you know, it's pretty incredible. And I would imagine, like, again, like, I think it was a really good creative decision to like de-emphasize the lightsaber combat with Yoda's training, but it might have also been like a practical concern where they're like, okay, we can't get this puppet to swing a lightsaber and not have it look ridiculous.
Yeah, Frank Oz is like,
Yeah.
I'm not. He's like, as coming from my Muppet expertise, I would highly recommend not having Yoda use a lightsaber.
Yeah, so like, it might have been practical. It might have been just like, we're not there yet. We need CGI before we can do this. You were talking about like the audience pop for Yoda with the lightsaber. Like, for me, it was like, the movie wasn't out yet. Attack of the Clones wasn't out yet. But like at Barnes and Noble, you know, and then they had the comics adaptation there, and one of my friends, he picked it up and he's paging through it, and he's like I saw like I saw his eyes, you know, bug out, and that's what it was.
You're like, what are you looking at?
Yeah, and
what you seeing there?
And it was like, you know, the sequence of Yoda like swinging that sword around. So it is a showstopper.
Oh,
you know?
my gosh.
And yeah, to think that it was in the works going back to 1980. So he teaches him this stuff, and then at the same time as he's and Yoda or Minch is teaching him how to like reach out and do like this astral traveling or whatever, and then that's where he ends up like talking to Darth Vader like in his head, you know, and he tells him like, you know, beware of the dark side of the Force, and like, the dark side of the Force can give you these powers, but it also, like, you know, takes something away from you.
The description of the Bog Planet, I mean, right there, the Dagobah vibes were like,
yeah,
so heavy, and like it, like in Brackett.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
like Dagobah's right there.
I mean,
like,
maybe she invented it, or maybe George Lucas was like, okay, they're gonna go to an ice planet, and then they're gonna go to a swamp planet, and then they're gonna go to a floating cloud like who knows? But you know, but it's like, it's, again, like, when I was, you know, researching the life of Jack Kirby for, you know, Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, it's like him and Stan Lee go into a room together, and then, you know, out comes, you know, the Fantastic Four or whatever, and, like, we'll never know for sure, like, how much is Jack Kirby, how much is Stan Lee, like, it's kind of like up to you to kind of make that call, but it's like we'll never know for certain. But it is obviously like, it's not like one guy did 0 and one guy did 100.
Yeah,
it's like there's some brew there, and so with this, it's I
love a good team up.
Yeah, so like Leigh Brackett didn't do 0, and she didn't do 100, and George Lucas didn't do 0 and didn't do 100, and you know, Lawrence Kasdan didn't do 0 and didn't do 100. So like, but you know, obviously, she did way more than what. You know, what word on the street is, you know? The way he leaves Dagobah is like a little different, or like his reasons, like, because in the final version, you know, he sees visions of his friends in trouble, and then they're like, and then Yoda's like, don't go, your training's not complete, you're gonna fuck things up if you go now, you gotta wait, you know, and he goes anyway, but I'm thinking there was like a different mode.
Yeah.
In the time between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, it's like, okay, Yoda says there is another. Who's the other? And so some people thought it was, you know, some people thought like, oh, maybe Han Solo secretly has the Force and he's the other. It wasn't like, oh, there's another and it's his sister and it's Princess Leia. It's like there's another. So they're setting up that there's like another Jedi out there that like might have possibly like been the plot for like, you know, Return of the Jedi, especially if like because I guess like we should mention like a big thing hanging over all of this is that they did not have Harrison Ford under contract for a third movie.
Yeah, they
were. So yeah, this script is structured, and the final script of Empire Strikes Back is structured where it's like, okay, this might be the last time we see Han Solo, so we need some kind of explanation. So in the final version, it's like he gets frozen in carbonite. In this one, it's like at the end of the movie, he goes off on that mission to like convince his father-in-law, his stepfather, to like join the rebellion. So it's like maybe we never see him again, and it's just like we get a phone call from him saying like, oh yeah, it's going good, in Return of the Jedi. But so like they had, and then also like they had the possibility that we might have to introduce some kind of like new hero to the mix. And so in this script, they tell, I forget if they tell Luke, maybe they tell Luke, or maybe like Yoda and Ben just talk to each other, but they say, Luke, I think they do tell Luke that you have a sister, and her name is Nelith.
Oh,
so
yes.
There was the idea that Luke had a sister, possibly a twin sister, but he had a sister who was also well-versed or has like the Force power and might join him. It wasn't Princess Leia. That they obviously like combined those story elements together in Return of the Jedi. But like they were setting up that Luke's got a twin sister, and that she might possibly show up in Part 3. So that's here. Like you have a sister, and she's the other that Yoda hints at in the finished version. If they just come out right out and say it. That seems like something that Leigh Brackett might have brought to the table of like, oh yeah, he's got a sister, and a lot of stuff here. And again, that's like another change that kind of happens from like early draft to final draft, where like in the first draft you kind of like spell everything out, and then in like later drafts you can kind of scale back and take things that you say very plainly and then make them into just hints, make them into just make them more subtle. Subtlety usually comes in later drafts. It's rare that you have like a subtle first draft because you still haven't figured out what this story is yet. So you got to kind of just put all your beats out there, as clearly as possible, and then finesse
refine
them.
It then.
Yeah. There's like a motif throughout this this script of people being frozen. Because in the Hoth scenes, there's like parts where like pipes burst and things in the base, and when the pipe bursts, you get hit with like the water in the pipe, and then you insta freeze.
Yes, yeah, like that. That's maybe they got the carbonite.
The carbon freezing, yeah, from
that. Because C-3PO gets frozen.
Yeah, C-3PO gets frozen.
They're still roasting him in this.
Yeah, he gets put through the ringer. They have to like thaw him out. So they are setting up this idea of like, okay, freezing people, and people are going to get frozen. In the script, again, Darth Vader is not Luke's father. And when he's on the Bog World, he meets the ghost of Anakin Skywalker. He talks to the ghost of Ben Kenobi. He also meets the ghost of, and this is like he completes his training in this version, and he meets the ghost of his father, and then Anakin Skywalker, who's not Darth Vader, he performs the ritual of knighting Luke Skywalker, like gives him, takes the sword and like kind of gives him and makes him like an official Jedi Knight.
That was so cool, and like, you're right. Like, he's like uses like the
I dub thee, Sir Luke of Skywalker, like the ghost of Anakin Skywalker. So like, the pieces are
Sir Anakin, Sir Paul, Sir Ben Kingsley.
And like the stuff with Darth Vader is pretty scary. Like when he's like able to choke Luke from a distance, and from like he can even do it like across space. So it is like, like it is kind of eerie.
Yeah, super powerful, and
he's definitely like really the heavy. I mean, he was the heavy in the final version of Empire, but then they throw the wrench in of like, oh, he's my father. But like in this, it's like, yeah, he will murder Luke.
That finale in Cloud City, it felt and was kind of described just like Empire Strikes Back. Like they're going like the layout of the area, and then I think he even like, does he fall? He comes onto the roof of the Falcon. Like they pick him up just pretty much just like
it does follow a lot of the same beats. Again, it doesn't have the "I am your father," but it is like they're fighting. They're like hurling stuff at each other with the Force, and it is this like and like Luke has some cool moves in it too, where like it even has like there's some parts in the Star Wars sequel trilogy where like they're sword fighting, and then like Rey will like let go of her lightsaber and drop it, and then it sends her opponent off balance. Like there's some of that in here too, where he's like fighting with Darth Vader, and then he kind of like, you know, diffuses his lightsaber, and then like Darth Vader kind of topples. You know, he throws him off balance. So some cool sword fighting, and again, like their conversation is more about like, oh, you know, Princess Leia would never be into a guy like you. You're such a wimp. Like it's, you know, like that's. I've been working out with Minch. It is that sort of go for broke sword fight, and the way he gets into Cloud City is kind of cool too, because Luke like lands on the planet and he lands on the surface, and then he meets those people who've been kind of like they feel like they've been kind of like fucked over by Lando. Like they trusted Lando and made him like he was part of the family, like an adopted son to like the chieftain, and then. You know, and there's like echoes of the Ewoks and stuff in these the Cloud Riders or whatever they're called, and then Luke's there, and then they're like distrustful of Luke, and then like at this point the Empire has like Cloud City on lockdown, and so then they're like, okay, Luke's like, how am I going to get in there? So then Luke comes up with like a plan for them to kind of, you know, get up there, and where they are bringing Luke and R2-D2 as quote unquote prisoners. You know, kind of like the first Star Wars when they have like they pretend that Chewbacca's in cuffs, and they're in that net that's kind of like the net that the Ewoks have, and so they fly this net that has like Luke and R2 in, and then they fly into Cloud City and like, oh yeah, we were presenting this prisoner, and then that's how he gets in. You know,
what a great scene too. I thought that was pretty awesome.
A pretty cool like bit of business.
Yeah.
You know? A little extra beat, like, you know, who knows? I mean, like I haven't read every Star Wars comic, but they made a Star Wars comic. It was like the last thing Dark Horse put out when they lost the Star Wars license. They did a comic based on like the early draft of script draft of Star Wars. That like kind of like a what if, you know, George Lucas said, okay, this is Star Wars. It would be cool to do a what if comic of like. This the Leigh Brackett Empire.
That would be so
cool.
Sick.
And I'm happy to do it.
Hey, you heard it here first. Put it on the record.
It is like a really interesting, complete story that's like similar but different enough that it's got its own legs. And like, Empire Strikes Back's a great movie. And if they had just taken this script and filmed this script, it would not be Empire Strikes Back. It would not. But it's still kind of a piece with Star Wars. Like it would probably be like about as good as Star Wars. Like like Empire kind of takes things to the next level, and this doesn't quite take things to the next level the same way. But it feels like Star Wars. Like it feels like, oh, this is like a worthy sequel to the first Star Wars. It's like, okay, we got Star Wars, and then here's Star Wars 2. You know,
I'd be all about it.
Yeah, it's like ready to go. It's just like, you know, Lucas was kind of smart enough to know that, okay, this isn't it yet. It needs some of this and that, and then they bring it, and then Irving Kershner, through directing, is kind of like they talk about the director as that's the final draft of the script is when you're actually shooting, and so he made a lot of changes too. You know, that
smart Lucas bringing his former USC professor in the mix.
Yeah. You. I mean, if you're open to collaboration, I mean, sometimes collaboration can go horribly wrong, but if you're open to collaboration, like, amazing things can happen.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, Luke has his big fight, and then, he does, like, kind of fall down a shaft. I think he does send kind of like a psychic message to Princess Leia.
Yeah, and they pick him up.
Yeah, and they do pick him up. And Lando does, it's got the same kind of stuff where it's like Lando says like, look, I was forced into this, and then he does kind of, you know, join up with them, and, you know.
Then Han goes off to Oven Markel. Like...
Yeah, I guess it's like a little easier to forgive Lando in this version because Han Solo is not in carbonite. He hasn't been sold to Boba Fett. He's okay. Like, he came through okay, and you know, and
as he's flying away, there's ADR. He's like, and I'll be back. If you pay me enough. He's like, I'll be back. if my contract allows.
It does kind of end similarly. It's like, okay, we've reconvened with the Armada. Like we're back with all the rebel ships, and now instead of, Chewbacca and Lando going off to rescue Han, it's like Han's going off on this like mission to like convince his father-in-law, or to convince his stepfather to join the rebellion. And there's also like early in the story, there's this really cool part where they have, like when they're still on the ice planet base, they have this map come up, this holographic map where it's like, okay, here's a holographic map of like rebel strongholds or whatever. Beep, 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 beep. It's, and then it's like, okay, now here's a map of the Empire, like Imperial strongholds, and it's like the whole thing fills up with like red of like and that's kind of cool, like this just map of the universe and like
I like that,
the ins and outs of like, okay, how's this war going, and it's not going well.
There's such cool details throughout this script.
Yeah, really just like it was a joy to read. Like it was obvious that Leigh Brackett knows how to tell a story and keep you turning the pages.
Leigh Brackett, like I'm like 85% certain that the character of Sheriff Brackett, Leigh Brackett in Halloween, was named in honor of Leigh Brackett.
Could be, yeah. She was like older, so they probably like kind of venerated her. Yeah, and especially like, because she wrote, I mean, she was a pulp writer, so like she became known for like the sci-fi stuff, but she wrote everything. Like she wrote detective, crime stories. She wrote everything. Like you said, she wrote The Big Sleep, and I was thinking like, oh no, that was Lawrence Kasdan, but I'm thinking of The Big Chill. The Big Chill. So I wonder if there is like the title of The Big Chill is kind of like a tribute to The Big Sleep, the sort of like hostile greeting when they arrive, like because Han shows up on Bespin and he expects like, oh, it's my old friend, and then it's like, okay, they get the hostile kind of cold meeting, and Leia is kind of like standoffish, like I don't trust this guy, this friend of yours, and then like Han is kind of like surprised when he sees the Cloud City, and they're kind of awed by it. They're like, whoa, what is this? What is this thing?
I like the visual of like the ruins that they're like living in. I thought that was pretty, like the city juxtaposed with the ruins, and then like the space elevator. I thought it looks pretty neat.
And we do get some more like tantalizing tidbits about the Clone Wars. Because again, like if you were like a huge fan of Star Wars back then, we haven't seen the Clone Wars. We've just heard little, we've just heard it referred to, here and there, and then in this script, like Lando starts talking about the Clone Wars.
Heavy clone mentioning in this script.
Yeah, and he's like, I am a clone, and he starts describing like what exactly the Clone Wars was, which is different from what we end up seeing in the prequels. It's like, okay, yeah, cloning became a big thing in the galaxy. A lot of people did. Some people thought like, oh, I'll preserve, like instead of having children, I'll just make clones of myself, and that's what he was. He was like a clone of his father, and his father had like a bunch of clones, like, and then wars started breaking out, and then clones became sort of like persecuted. People didn't trust them, and then got killed off, and
totally different but pretty cool, like avenue they went down.
The Falcon like kind of turns around and then blows its afterburners on the stormtroopers, and they start like getting blown back and rolled back, which again, it's like never leave a part unused. No. Like that was in the most recent Star Wars movie. That was in Rise of Skywalker. They do that. It turns and like blows.
They really use the on these. They use the whole buffalo on these. Like...
Again, they have the little chip that's going to show you where to find the Jedi Master, and Anakin's Force Ghost. Which again, it's kind of sad to see that Anakin's Force Ghost kind of like written out of, out of Return of the Jedi. Like I mean, again, I still watch the original version. I don't watch the special edition, and then I especially don't watch the version with Hayden Christensen's hologram. Like it just like I understand.
Talk
the reason.
About like
because that the end of Return of the Jedi works for me every time, and when it's like, I get it. I understand why you substituted Hayden Christensen, but it doesn't work anymore. it's stupid. You can't take it seriously when you see it. It's like, okay, so who's that young guy? Is that my little brother? You know, who is that? That I'm.
Sebastian Shaw is like, damn it.
It's funny looking at Leigh Brackett's like screenwriting credits, because it is like, you wrote the script for Empire Strikes Back, and you wrote the script for Robert Altman's Long Goodbye, and you wrote the script to Rio Bravo. Like,
effing kidding me?
I highly recommend every single one of those movies. I've never seen The Big Sleep.
Robert Altman's Long Goodbye, great flick. Elliot Gould,
Leigh Brackett, like, mea culpa. Like, I'm sorry that I didn't read this script sooner. You wrote the first draft of my favorite movie ever, and so much of what I love in that movie is here in your first draft. I wish I would have read it sooner. I mean, it just didn't occur to me to like that you know, like I'd read, you know, some scripts here and there, you know, in school and stuff, but it's only when we started doing this show that it's kind of like, okay, let's start checking out some of these scripts. Yeah,
I really wish she could have lived to see what it turned into.
Maybe you know, and again, like, who knows how cool Return of the Jedi might have been if she, you know, came back for that one.
Or Lucas would have brought her into the mix.
Well, yeah, because
again.
It sounds like he was ready to, like, you know, continue the process with her. You know, had she lived, you know, that like, okay, this isn't it, but we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get there. And maybe he would have brought in Lawrence Kasdan anyway. Like, you know, who knows?
I'm a Kasdan backer.
Yeah. No, I love Kasdan too, and I really liked Solo. And of course, Force Awakens. He co-wrote that. Yeah, like I'm a huge, and of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark, all that, and I do like, you know, The Big Chill, and, you know, yeah, Kasdan's great, but it's like, yeah, like Leigh Brackett is like this key player in, you know, what to me is like, you know, the greatest movie I've ever seen, and I'm so glad I finally got to read it. It was great. I will read it again too. Like, I had a great time.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to revisiting it. I am going to draw a picture of Chewbacca fighting a Wampa, whether somebody else has done that already or not. I'm gonna do it because I feel like I have, and I would love to do a comic book adaptation of this. You know,
are you listening, Disney?
I've enjoyed all these scripts that we've read,
great.
all these first drafts we've read, and this one is like a real, you know,
it was
real
a treat.
high point. Yeah, real treat.
Cheers, Leigh Brackett.
And I want to start digging into her back catalog. I want, because I have read, you know, some you know, pulps here and there.
Yeah.
And I've read like some of her husband's pulps, Edmund Hamilton, you know, Captain Future and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I've read some of those, and they're awesome. And Edmund Hamilton also, like, I kind of touched on this a little bit in my Jack Kirby book, but like, Edmund Hamilton wrote this pulp story that is like pretty much the story of like the Watcher in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Kirby was kind of pulling from Edmund Hamilton's you know, Watcher stories that he in these pulps for like the Marvel Watcher. So like, I want to, you know, so the same way I've read some Edmund Hamilton, I want to start reading some Leigh Brackett, some of that old sci-fi. Like, some of that stuff is like super cool.
What a great read, and I loved it. It was a treat, and an important Leigh Brackett, such an important person in the Star Wars universe.
Film is a collaborative medium, and, you know, Star Wars has all the, like, you know, all these names, you know, and you know, like Dennis Muren, Phil Tippett, John Dykstra, you know, Ben Burt. Like, there's all these like names, and like, you know, Leigh Brackett is like among them. You know, a big force in a room. Oh, that's another thing that I forgot from the script. There's a moment in, it's like, okay, Star Wars, may the force be with you is like the big catchphrase, you know, from Star Wars. And so then in this, there's a moment where, like, I think like maybe Han says it to Luke after he, like, you know, turfs out during his fight with the Wampas. Han's like, the force just wasn't with you today, kid.
That is, and you know, that's totally like, you could like hear Harrison Ford's like,
yes,
what, how,
and so, like, you know, so as far as I know, we still haven't gotten that in a Star Wars. The force just wasn't with you today.
So I've already booked the Total Recall charter to Wyoming to Harrison Ford's ranch. And I'm gonna, you know, book some time for him to recite into my mini cassette recorder the Force just wasn't with you today, kid.
We could probably get like Mark Hamill to do his Harrison Ford imitate. The Force wasn't with you, kid.
I show up wearing one gold earring, try to like. I'm like,
hey Harrison, we're Hanukkah. There's also a part where Luke is like he's about to like go into like maybe he's about to fight Darth Vader or he's about to go into some dangerous situation. And he's like. May the Force be with me.
Yes,
Force be with me. So I like that they're kind of playing with the "May the Force be with you" thing in this script. Yeah, this was a joy. This was great.
Great, so good to be back in the Total Recall studios is awesome.
Yeah, it's good being back and to like reconvene and discuss one of the great works and then Empire Strikes Back is like one of the great works of film, but then maybe like a more underappreciated work in the history of film is the Leigh Brackett's first draft of Empire. So.
Yeah. May the Force be with me.
Yeah, may the Force be... the Force just wasn't with you today, Matt. I'm sorry. Better luck next time, kid. Also, like, Minch, Yoda, like, he doesn't talk backwards. Like, he doesn't have his weird language yet. He just kind of says what he means. And
he was like...
speaks pretty normal. He's tricksy, he's still kind of like mischievous. You've been watching the Leigh Brackett Empire Strikes Back episode of Total Recall. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics.
And I'm Matt Zeoli.
Support my Patreon. It's just go on patreon.com and search Tom Scioli, Scioli.
And you can follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli or on Instagram at Tom_Scioli, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Total Recall Show and on Instagram at Total_Recall_show. Happy 2021, everybody.
The Force wasn't with him today.
Sorry, kid, the Force just wasn't with you today. Better like they really okay. These Wampas, they're super dangerous. They have like their talent, their claws are like razors. Their teeth are like razors. They can, walk. They talk about them like walking through, blocks of ice at like ghosts. They can become intangible, and they're still like busting Luke's chops about that he like just wasn't. He didn't quite pull it off. Fighting those Wampas. It's like, what did they expect?